In this audio clip, I want to talk about what prayer is in Mahayana Buddhism. So, for many people who have grown up in the Western religions, I think there's a misconception of what prayer is. A lot of that misconception comes from a corrupted version of Christianity known as the Prosperity Bible. We see a little bit of this in the New Age variations, known as the Law of Attraction. And we also see this out of Hollywood, where people are portrayed praying to a god or a supreme being for things that they want or they don't want. Well, a lot of times maybe they pray for their own safety, or they pray for something to happen that is beneficial. So a lot of this is corrupted views of prayer, that in where a deity is viewed as a wish-fulfilling genie, and that your full heartfulness of prayer will somehow entice the wish-fulfilling genie to magically grant you what you want. So these are corrupted views of prayer. Now, in the Mahayana religion, prayer is something that is not often talked about, but it is part of the path. And it is where you comes before a great bodhisattva such as Amitabha. You're calling upon Amitabha's name not because you want something, not because you want him to take you to a better place, but mostly because you are laying in front of Amitabha all the things that are preventing you from reaching enlightenment in this lifetime. And the same can be said for praying to any of the other great cosmic, they're called Mahasattva Bodhisattvas, in which these are not actually flesh and blood people that have died. They're not like saints. These are probably more like transcendent essences or spirits, in which you are laying before them your burdens. You're saying, you are putting in front of them your troubles. These are the things that are bothering you. These are the things that are just really causing you suffering. That really is the true prayer. And even you still see it in Islam, and to a larger extent in, I would say, more Orthodox Judaism. You see this sort of view of laying before God or telling God all the things that are causing you suffering and why they're causing you suffering. And it's more, you could call it a sort of a spiritual confession, in which you are confessing what it is that is causing you to be hindered from enlightenment. Though the only person listening is the universe, there's no human receptor at the other end of that confession. So this is the aspect of true prayer, not corrupted prayer. We would see this corrupted prayer, like I said, in the Prosperity Bible, in where people are praying to a divine entity for earthly treasures. We also kind of see this in some of the more culty aspects of Buddhism, in where people are chanting the name of Amitabha, or they're chanting the name of the Lotus Sutra in whatever language they were told to, because they want something material. They want a new BMW, or they want a better boyfriend, or something like that. These are corrupted prayers. The other version of the corrupted prayer, we see in Hollywood, where there's some danger coming towards a person, and they do a quick, the Catholic cross on their chest, or they do a quick prayer that something bad won't happen. And of course, we all know this is a tale that something will happen. That's how Hollywood works. But Hollywood tends to view prayer as a precursor to something negative, which again is a corrupted thing. We don't pray to a bodhisattva to avoid for bad things. That's just not something that a bodhisattva has the power of. Bodhisattvas are not omnipotent. Bodhisattvas don't know the future. Something they're able to say they were a greater being. They are infinite and immortal, but they're not omniscient. They're not all-knowing. And even the God of the Bible, that would be the Hebrew Bible, is also not omnipotent, as a lot of Christians would portray such a God. And we also know that the Hebrew God is not the only God. There are multiple other gods. So we know this because it's all there in the documentation and the holy books, if anybody bothers to read them, which I don't think a whole lot of people actually read these books. And that's a whole other subject along different lines. Prayer in Buddhism is often a private ritual. It could involve standing in front of a effigy or some representation of the great bodhisattvas. Often an offering is given. It could be an offering of water or food or incense, of light, like lighting a candle, of a token of appreciation. If you have spare change, and dropping it in a small collection box, whatever you wish it to be. You're just giving something to the shrine, to the uptake and care, but also to set the ambience, such as lighting a candle or offering incense, or just even, being silent and reverent is enough. But then it's the full, really taking the time to lay before the feet of the Buddha or the Bodhisattvas what it is that's hindering you, what it is that's creating suffering in your life right now. And you lay it at the feet of the Bodhisattva without any expectations. You don't expect the Bodhisattva or the Buddha to take away your pain or your suffering or change your karma. Even the Buddha said that no Buddha can change the karma of an individual. And a Buddha is even higher in realization than a bodhisattva. And so that pretty much says everything right there. Those that say that there is no prayer in Zen or in Mahayana are mistaken. Those that deny the existences of Buddhas and bodhisattvas, especially the Maha Bodhisattvas, the unborn, the eternal bodhisattvas, those are just secular people. They look at Zen and Mahayana more for the secular benefits, or I would say more for the materialistic benefits, peace of mind, or relaxation, or perhaps simplicity. They do not look at Buddhism or Zen as a spiritual path. They look at it more as a psychology path, which maybe that's just a step along the way, maybe a very first step, a very beginner step, and maybe in a later on in their life, or future lives, that might come to be something. I don't get into a whole lot of this idea of seed planting. That's kind of a Christian thing. You'll plant your seed now and it'll grow. I tend to believe that your disposition of mind is pretty much set, somewhere around your young, 7 to 8 year old self. That disposition really kind of takes hold and kind of becomes cemented in. And it takes an incredible amount of relinquishment and of letting go and of just seeing what that mind is and how it's created an immense amount of suffering for any of that cement to be chipped away, to be dissolved, and to reveal the innate true self that's been there the whole time. Many people say that's underneath, but it's always there. It's just covered up with the delusion, the hard, crystallized notions of yourself, what you think you are. And a lot of that is formed in early childhood. Even the Buddhists will talk about it. This is another reason why the Tibetans are very keen to get a hold of young, recognized reincarnates at a very early age before the hardness of the worldly ways can set in on them. Is prayer mandatory in Buddhism? Not really. It's something that I think that you come to within your own time and your own way. There's really no formality of prayer. It's not the, in the Catholics are taught early on that you go to your knees and you put your hands together and you recite certain words and then you begin your prayer. There are some variations of that within the Buddhist traditions. You would bow at the altar or bow at the effigy of the Bodhisattva, light incense and stuff like that, and then step back and bow again, and then you can either silently, recite your prayer, which would be the things that are really causing you suffering, and then you would bow again when you're done, and then you would back away slowly. That's a formalized version, very Japanesey. Some cultures are really like that. They just really get into formalization of everything, and the Japanese culture created formalized rituals for just about everything. And when it comes to Zen and the Japanese culture, everything in there is highly ritualized ceremony, including the meditation. It's a highly ritualized ceremony. Though, when you really look at you read the stuff for yourself and you start to really look at what's going on here, you see that the cultural interpretations of these things and the high ritualized versions that we see in other countries, you can see the much more informal, if not very relaxed version as well. And here in the West, we are an informal culture where we're not tied up in formalities and protocol as other cultures might be. We are very informal, very relaxed. And in this, prayer to a bodhisattva can be simply as taking a walk in the park, or sitting by the pond, or by the riverside, or just in a garden. It doesn't have to be anything as structured or ceremonial as we would see in other Asian countries, where structure and format and ceremony and ritual are much more embedded into the culture. And this is where, I would often argue with other Westerners who were studying Buddhism in the cultural context of these other countries, is to not be fooled by these cultural contexts, in where I encourage them to take a look at the essence of what's happening and take that into your own existing culture. And some do, some don't. It really depends on that person's own level of understanding and their own level of sincerity. Sometimes I really think that many of these people that shave head and wear robes and pretend to be ancient Japanese monks, I wonder sometimes if they're not just running from something or if they're just hiding from something. And this is what I call the LARPing, the live action role playing, in that there's something else going on there that's more than just spiritual seeking and spiritual questing. And sometimes there is, and then sometimes I just don't know. But if they can't take it into this culture, into the people who are around them, then I would just say somehow they're lost in what is being shown to them. They're still grasping for straws, or still seeking, and they're not somebody who I would necessarily call a teacher, or somebody I would want to go to for advice. Now that's just me, my opinion, not necessarily, nothing out of the canon there, or nothing that I would say is an absolute. However, I tend to go with people who can show me the enlightenment, even in the supermarket or in a crowded shopping mall, versus somebody who insists that we always have to be at a temple or in serene grounds to talk about the Buddha path. Anyhow, this is my talk on prayer, and I hope it has given you some insight into what I think prayer is, and perhaps for you to explore more and look at what you think prayer is.